Sculptable, celluclay. This stuff here, celluclay, shrinks like crazy. This doesn't, but it sets up really fast. If you mix them together, 50, you get the best of both. Minimal shrinkage or practically none. And so basically I take a bowl, cup of this, cup of that, depending on how much groundwork I want to make, maybe 2 or 3 cups. And then you can mix in some white glue. That also helps control shrinkage and helps adhesion. Then some brown paint, the cheap Walmart acrylic brand. Some black paint, because otherwise your brown paint's going to dry sort of light pink, and that eliminates having to paint out pink spots when you do paint your groundwork. Water, just start mixing in a cup at a time until you get the consistency you want. It's going to take a lot more water than you think, and you go from there. Now, last night I stained the base quickly, put a little polyurethane on it, and glued a piece of cork tile to it. Now, if you got your entire base covered with this cork, of course you're not going to have to worry as much about getting a good varnish coat, because you're not going to have any warpage. The moisture won't get to the base. And I have some, so right here, I have some groundwork already made up. If you got excess groundwork when you finish your project, put it in a plastic bag, stick it in the refrigerator, and unless it goes moldy on you, you can use it for quite a while. And I'm going to just quickly apply some and then review some of the possible materials you can use. There are all kinds of materials you can use for a scenic base. So I got a little cup of groundwork already made up. Made this up some time ago, and it'll keep for a long time in the fridge. If it starts to dry out, you can add a little water. If it goes moldy, just throw it away. Start again. So this is Sculptable, celluclay, 50-50, some white glue, some brown paint, and some black paint. And some people like it pretty wet to work with. Others want it a little drier. That's up to you. And if you're careful, you don't even have to mask your base, but it's probably a good idea. And if you, I like to use it or work with it pretty wet, so it's going to take anywhere from 2 to 4 days to dry thoroughly. So don't get in a hurry if you do use a wet setup. And you'll notice that, you may notice that the base is kind of pockmarked. I take a screwdriver and poke a bunch of little holes to help the groundwork or the cork tile adhere. Gives it a little texture to hold on to. And it's fun to do. Just be careful you don't hurt yourself. All right. This will give you a fair idea here. Now, if you use your fingers to smooth out your groundwork, go back and go the other way, because believe it or not, you will detect finger marks once the stuff dries. And if they're all running the same direction, it looks really weird. It looks like, hey, somebody did that with his fingers. But anyway, all right, there's the wet groundwork, and I'll just show you a few of the materials you may or may not want to use. Okay, you got your standard static grass. Roger's got plenty of this. Comes in various shades. This is one of your more, some shades are rather unnatural looking. This is fairly natural looking green. I just sprinkle it over the wet groundwork, blow off the excess. When the stuff sets up, if it's not thick enough, you can always put on some diluted white glue and add more static grass. Blow to make it stand up. And of course you're going to have, if you do this on the kitchen table, you're going to have, you got static grass all over the kitchen table. No problem for a bachelor, but you know how that goes. Okay, I got some fairly small aquarium gravel in a natural color. You're gonna paint all this anyhow, but got some kitty litter, also mostly in a natural color for small rocks. I also have, I didn't bring them, I got a bag of just plain old aquarium gravel in medium size. White was the most natural color I could find. You know, if you get one of your weird colors of aquarium gravel like aqua or purple, you're gonna have to be really careful painting that out. Tree roots. For small trees, if you can find a large enough root, you can do a fairly good sized tree. You may want to use some extra white glue where you insert this to make sure it takes hold and stays where you want it. And from my own back or front yard, lichen is a lot finer than stuff you'll buy. So when those tree limbs fall, look for the lichen. And one more material I brought, oregano leaves. For where this scrawny little bit of tree has shed. And there are a bunch of other materials you can use. You can use railroad grass, all sorts of things.
Just like a fig tree on the way to Jerusalem.
Yeah. And that's the basic. Depending on how thick you put on your groundwork and how wet you get it, you're looking at 2 to 4 days for it all to set up thoroughly, and then you're going to paint and finish. Any questions?
So in 4 days, you would come back and hit that with an airbrush, I guess, or?
You can I hand brush it, but I'm just weird. Yeah, you can airbrush it. One thing, if you airbrush the grass, a lot of times people end up with, it looks like somebody's manicured lawn, and if that's not what it's supposed to be, it's a little too even.
Right.
But I'd airbrush just the dirt, you know, airbrush everything dirt color, and then come back and dry brush the grass. If it's not somebody's front lawn, if it's supposed to be a wild setting, I think that looks a little more natural. And this cork stuff blends in with the groundwork beautifully. So that is the basic now for your lichen and your little trees. And I would add a little white glue when I stick it in there. I always do, so it doesn't come loose later. And that's how I did basically use the same technique for this thing that I did just for this little base here.